It is All Things Considered and member-supported Hawaii Public Radio, HPR1, and I'm Dave Lawrence. Grateful to have you here, especially right now. We are in the tail end of a pledge drive where we ask listeners to support our nonprofit radio station, and it just so happens to coincide with what they are billing as the first and last appearance in Hawaii of one of the most remarkable performers, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, guy I've had a personal connection to for most of my life now. Parliament Funkadelic are words you associate with George Clinton. They are his trademarks, and they're things that have been inspiration to so many people in the darkest of times and the best of times. He's here sharing that magic through Sunday at the Blue Note, and he's taken a few minutes for us, and it's a real treat to get to talk to him. Welcome, George. Great to see you, my brother.
Roof, good to be here. This is going to be a vacation and a job at the same time.
Does it get better than something like this?
It get better than that. I used to come here years ago in the 70s when I was doing Mothership, Bootsy, Rubber Band. I used to write the ballads right from the Royal Hawaiian, right here, the Pink Hotel.
Right. Royal Hawaiian.
Yeah, it looks so different now. I'm so glad to be back here.
You were writing some of the classic ballad songs? Is that what you
Yeah, I was just here enjoying myself, and I got to writing, and I would go between here and Maui. I did that from like 76 to like 82 all the time.
Yeah, I remember we talked on the phone once, did a phone interview, and you actually told me about coming here to write songs. And thinking about some of that history, I was trying to think of some things to ask you that your hardcore fans maybe have not been able to hear about. So I picked things that you've already talked about, not going to talk about those, but that I haven't found at least. So we know that you formed the Parliaments. You were straightening hair, New Jersey, at a hair salon. But prior to that,
Grade school. Actually, about 1957, Frankie Lyman came out with Why Do Fools Fall in Love? And when that record was such a hit, every school had a doo-wop vocal group in it. All throughout my neighborhood in New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, all that whole area was doo-wop. So we started Parliament, and I was about 14 years old.
And prior to that, any musical thing that you can...
No, just sneaking over to the Apollo Theater about a couple of years before that with my cousin, watching the Spaniels and all the groups and Cadillacs, all of the doo-wop groups that was, rock and roll was just becoming of age at that time.
It was a critical formation for rock and roll, and that the doo-wop was a big thing. And clearly, when you think about your Motown experience, staff song...
That was the next generation from 57 to 60. Smokey entered the picture along with Berry Gordy, and now you had the Marvelettes, the Supremes, the Temptations, Stevie Marvin. I worked at Joe Bett in New York City at that time. So I was part of the Motown thing. That was our second stint. We stayed there to the 69. When we got a hit record, I Want to Testify, which was out of Detroit. It wasn't no Motown, but it was one of the Motown competitors. And we had Testify was a hit. And after that, it was Free Your Mind, Your Ass Will Follow. We just changed our whole direction because the European invasion was happening. They started Rolling Stones, Beatles, and Led Zeppelin, and Who's, and all of that. Jimmy, I knew him from the Ozzy Brothers and King Curtis, but he had come back here with a brand new thing. And so right away, I saw we had to change because Motown had moved to L.A. and it was no longer a Detroit thing no more. So we went off into Funkadelic, turned the amps up real loud, start playing loud Motown music, and that's what people could start calling it Funkadelic instead of psychedelic.
That term, how did that term come to be for its first time?
James Jamerson, the bass player at Motown, called Billy Bass and Eddie Hazel, Tiki and Bernie Worrell the Young Funk Brothers, because they was all like 16 years old. He called them the Young Funk Brothers, and psychedelic music was the music that was happening at that moment. So I just took what he said, the funk, which had been a term my mother's used to, use with Lightning Hopkins and Muddy Waters. That was funky music back in those days. And I took that and just saw Jimmy was doing the psychedelic, and I said, I do this funkadelic, the mid-tempo version of R&B. Rock and roll was the fast version of R&B. The Chuck Berrys and the Richards, and that was rock and roll. And also the blues was the real slow part. Both of those was taken by the European groups that was coming out. They was doing rock and roll and blues. So we said, we're going to do the mid-tempo music. The only people that was doing that.
You charted your own course. That's something that wasn't being done.
Yeah. So New Orleans was the only one that had a field that wasn't, they were the only ones doing that mid-tempo, Get out of my life, when the you don't love. That's the really funk that we did. Whoa, hi, hey. So you got the Meters and us were probably the only bands doing that basic raw, sound like background tracks, and just talk shit over it.
Good old funky music for one.
Good old funky music. That was the first one of those songs. That was when I decided to make that turn and go deliberately away from the strict, tight productions at Motown, because they was classy, tight, clean. I had to go totally the opposite way. Loud, noisy, long, no 3 minutes. We went for album cuts, songs that would last for 7, 8 minutes. Free Your Mind. I did that one, that crazy, so I set a standard. You didn't know what bag we was going to be in from then on. Because it was hard trying to get a 45 hit single every time you put a record out. So I said, I'm deliberately not go for 45s and just go for albums, jazz, gospel, and rock and roll. They were
Seaming it all together.
Yeah, those were the ones that made the album sell. So it took a long time because you'd be underground for years. And I realized that we stayed underground. I mean, popular as we've been with the Mothership and all that, we still probably the best underground secret, best kept secret, because we still sell out like we still got hit records. But it's those albums, take the live forever.
That's a great way of putting it, though. The difference between like James Brown above ground, George Clinton the underground from the beginning. And I always really, when we talked the last time, we talked about a lot because you shared some key members down the road with Fred, Maceo, and so forth, and Bootsy, obviously.
Lifetime Achievement Awards in a couple of weeks.
No, it's huge. Tell us a story of when you first met James yourself or came across him. Give us an interesting story because I've never heard you talk about it. And we're talking about the summit of the guys.
I met him a few times, but I didn't know him that well. The time that I met James personally to talk to him, I was doing one of those panels in New York with what was that? I forget his name. It was one of those panels. Myself, the Patti Nona Hendrix, Madonna, James Brown, and the Chili Peppers was in the audience. That's the first time I met them.
So I'm thinking 80s, late 80s, something like that.
Mid 80s. Right when Madonna hit. Right
when you had produced the Chili's.
I produced them 6 months later. Okay, because I met them there, and that's when they asked me. But I was on the panel with James and Nona Hendrix and Madonna was on one of them panels. And I met James, so when I met him, I told him, I said, James, give me 18, you're trying to say something, clever, getting ready to start the panel. I said, James, give me 18 splits. I figured he going to tell me to go to hell. He got up and did 18 splits and asked me for 2. And I bust my balls on the first one. I didn't get but 1 in. That was, nah.
That's the first time you met him?
That was the first time I met him, to talk to him in anything.
That's pretty surprising.
And then later on, Bootsy, and I recorded with him a couple of songs on the Family series.
Is that a special thing for you to feel like, wow, because you guys are the bookends. I mean, that's it. You know that. I don't got to tell you that. But I mean, it's like it's James Brown and George Clinton who did.
He was the king. That was it. Then, then later on we met Fred, and Bootsy brought all them, Fred and Mason. So once you met the whole crew, then you realize, okay, this is what that family was like.
Right.
And they all was tight. You can tell that they had been to school in a situation like James, because each one of them can actually run a whole congregation, a band. I mean, so Mace did it with us. He did it with Prince. He did.
It's a school, like you said.
It's school. I mean, Fred he goes around the world doing it for everybody. Put bands together. Bootsy the same way, and pretty much all of them was like that.
When I look at you today, George and I were fortunate enough to look at a picture of the two of us together 20 years ago. It was October 1999, and boy, don't we both look different. And one of the things was, I look at your fashion today, and I look at the pictures, bootlegs I've got from the early 70s, records, magazine clippings and stuff. When did you first put this emphasis on the striking fashion statements that you've become known for? Because early on, there were wild ones that you always had a different, kind of like you found your own pocket with the music, you found your own pocket with the fashion.
Well, coming out of New Jersey, it was straight sharp, tie in grade school. I mean, I'm talking about 13 and 14 years old. Your parents tell you get a job because you're talking about getting a tailor-made suit at Wilma for Easter, and another, and you were still growing. But that was the thing. Most of us got it probably from the mob, the gangsters always had those slick, long collar suits. So in the hood, we pretty much took that image on, that style. So when I became a barber, it was intensified because once people got their hair done, they was really sharp, they got really clean, and so I know all the different styles of dress and hairdos and all that. So when we got to Motown, we thought we was the sharpest things in the world with the hairdos and the suits. But as soon as we got there, it changed. Like I said, the Rolling Stones and all that started coming. So we had to be able to go about face from all that clean and get funky, because they was calling it hippies, but it looked like poor people like we did at home, with the patches, holes in your jeans. It just looked like, you was poor. We really know how to do that. But we weren't going to stop with just patches. That was too cool. I mean, that was too nice. We got sheets. We got diapers and cut out wigs and made breasts. We did every silly thing because we was also inspired by the Coasters. You remember the Coasters? They did silly stuff when they was on stage. They had act. It was an act. It wasn't just a song.
I didn't know they did that kind of stuff.
Oh, they had a complete skit. The song was a whole skit. And so we kind of went for that, the Motown. I just took everything that anybody did that worked and just put it together. And by the time we got to America Eats Young, Maggot Brain, all of that, we had got tripping. We had started taking acid, so we was gone. You know what I'm saying? I told him that was a lot of dope ago. We were out of our mind because we run into all these kids who changed us. We thought we was gonna go out and make people fall in love with us, the girls. And next thing we know, we was old school before we got started because we was hanging with the hippie kids, and they was right away. We was like in the midst of something that we had no idea. So now that we had to find a way to be slick with being funky. So then you get all of the chicken feet and the clown costume. We was in Boston. I went to see Led Zeppelin and what's his name? Flute.
Jethro Tull. Ian Anderson, Jethro
Tull. I went and saw them, and it was like all the kids was dressed in their funky hippie outfit. So I took everybody to the costume place the next day, and we bought every conceivable thing in it. Like I said, the chicken feet, the wings, the mask, and so when we played Maggot Brain the next time, somebody's coming out of a casket with the fence mask on, or either I would come out of the casket with the chicken feet, while they playing Maggot Brain. And we just started making a thing. It wasn't a group anymore. It was a play. And it was, like
In action and very spontaneous, evolving.
All kinds of, and the audience always was a part of it. And it just stayed that way. They grew up right with us. So now you always get their kids and their kids' kids and their kids' kids, just like my kids and my grandkids are in the group now.
Well, it's funny you say that because Gary Scheider, Diaper Man, and then you've got the kid here.
His son is in that. The drummer is the trumpet player's son.
It's incredible, that kind of lineage and connection. When you were talking about that as it got weird in the mid-period of the 70s, one of the things that you're known for, something that's in the Smithsonian, I should add, makes George a very historic figure, the mothership itself.
The mothership, by that time we were, say, 76, we were trying to go for a funk opera. You know, Pink Floyd had did their thing. The Beatles had the Sgt. Pepper, thing. And those kind of shows had been, yeah, all of them had come, did their big production. So we said we're going to do a funk opera. And it was going to be the Mothership Connection. Neil Bogart wanted to name it Land in the Ghetto. No, we got to come to the land and get everybody. So it was the Mothership Connection and the spaceship, and then underwater with the Motor Booty Affair. All of those was big props. We got Larry Legaspi did the costumes from Cats. The guy that did the costumes of Cats.
Who was doing your costume?
Joe Fisher did the spaceship, and he designed it. He did all the Broadway plays, the big Cats, the big props, and
he designed the actual mothership.
He designed the mothership, yeah.
And who had thought of the idea to put a spaceship on the stage?
Well, I wanted the spaceship because the record was a hit already. It was a hit already, and so I told Neil Bogart, who was a promotion man himself from Buddha and all of that.
Tim Bogart, Casablanca.
Yeah, but that's his son. Okay. Yeah, Neil Bogart.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, Neil Bogart, right, for head of Casablanca.
Yeah, the head of Casablanca, yeah. So he was a promotion man, so he knew that with a spaceship, we could promote for years every album. And consequently, I promoted the album even after Casablanca was gone. I was still promoting albums with the mothership.
That's great. So that's great history I never knew. So the record was out. Then you were like, the record's a hit. We need to capitalize on it. One great way would be, let's do a spaceship on the
spaceship. You ain't going to get the back end royalties anyway, right. But they'll help you get a prop,
One of the cool things about that is Casablanca Records was home to Kiss, which was another of the most visual bands of the era.
Kiss, Donna Summers, right. All three of us at the exact same time. He was the epitome of promotion and hype.
Did you ever, when you were dressed in your full regalia, like the band, did you guys and Kiss ever be in the same place with them dressed like?
Same boots. I gave him a pair of boots that he had, that he used to wear. He swore to God he gave them to me.
Who's this, a guy in Kiss?
Yeah.
Gene Simmons with the tongue.
Yeah. So, and I have the boots on in Up for the Downstroke.
Wow. Final question. You've been very generous with your time tonight. When we look at this, to wrap up a lot of bands, I've seen so many bands say it's our final tour, and then 20 years later they're still touring, or sometimes they come back and do another one, or sometimes it is their final tour. Why?
I had 6 months to it. To put it that way, they're doing my lifetime achievement thing right now. So it's actually getting hotter than we've ever been since we've been out here. And the kids are learning to take over the group. That's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. And I see I'm probably have to go for another 6 to 8 months after this. But I plan to leave in November. It'll probably be towards the next.
Why?
Why I'm leaving? Oh, the band is around 78 years old this year.
And it's time to move on.
They got it. They doing, I'm getting in their way now, but
and you're looking for them to keep it going after your.
Yeah, that's when you see the night, you'll see it's brand new show. It's been that way for the last couple of years, and we played with the Chili Peppers in Australia about 3 weeks ago. It was lit. They got the kind of energy now that it brought all of us back. Even woke the Chili Peppers back up. Because the kids knew the Chili Peppers when they were babies. These kids, they knew Chili Peppers when Anthony and them was 17.
They've been in your life so long.
Yeah, so they got the chance to see
the evolution of
the thing, and they were blown away.
And George produced the Chili's in the mid '80s. I mean, George's connection with them goes back decades.
Freaky Style, they got some. Fred, we had Fred Wesley and Mason on their record.
So where will we find you when the touring's done? You're just going to be kicking where?
We're doing movies and cartoons and animation. So I'm still be producing the band. Yeah, I still got a finger for that.
It is the legendary Dr. Funkenstein himself, Parliament Funkadelic. It's George Clinton, and he's through Sunday at the Blue Note, and there are basically no tickets left for this thing. But during our pledge drive that we've got on All Things Considered right now, what a huge thrill on public radio to have you supporting us by being here as our guest like this and just taking some time for me tonight. I hope this was fun. I hope you had a good time. I appreciate it.
I might have some more good time when I'm here.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Yo, this is George Dr. Funkenstein Clinton, and I'm asking you to join right now. No, not P-Funk. We've got more than enough members. I want you to join this radio station, Hawaii Public Radio. We're having a pledge drive, y'all. We're in the middle of my favorite radio show, All Things Considered, with my dear friend and fellow Funketeer, Dave Lawrence. Please join Dave and I as members of HPR right now. Make a pledge of the amount you can afford and know we'll do the dog for you. Here's how, and thank you for giving us a helping hand. Roof.